Hello and welcome to Esther's Gardening Adventures. I'm Esther and today I am winter sowing the plants and the vegetables for my spring garden. These are plants that are generally able to take a slight frost to maybe even a heavier frost and that don't do really well in the heat. So it's things like lettuces, kale, peas. Now I'm not winter sowing the peas, beets, but things like that. If this is your first time hearing about winter sowing, you're going to see all about it, but I have a whole video series where I break down everything you need to know about the process. So check out my winter sowing 101 series. But in a nutshell, this is a way to grow seedlings outdoors in things like milk jugs instead of indoors under grow lights. When it comes to the spring garden, I tend to leave my root vegetables like beets for the direct sowing, which means I'm basically planting them directly in the soil at the time I'm supposed to instead of starting them first in containers. And I do this because one, transplanting that many seedlings in the spring takes a lot of time and I need to get them in the ground like this in March. I thought I'd take you along with me as I winter sow them. I'll show you what I'm sowing and I'll explain some of the reasons I'm picking these different varieties. One of the reasons I picked the Chinese mustard is I really like to have it in stir fries and in my Asian vegetable soups, which I hope to do a video on eventually. Probably gonna do 5 in here. Now when they're this tiny, you have two options. You can do a thin layer on top, or if you can see where they are, you can also just sort of cover them up because when they're this tiny, they don't really need a big layer. One of the things I love about this is that it's only 30 to 40 days to harvest. And in this case, it says they're heat tolerant and suitable for year round. So in my big community garden that I'm now renting, which by the way, I just announced that, so check out that video, I should have room to grow these year round depending on how they do with pest pressure. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ooh, we'll do one there. So again, you want a really thin layer of potting soil on top. I'll put it where I can look at it nice and easily in the container. And now I just need to tape it up. Next up, let's go to onions. This is a new thing I'm doing this year because I have that bigger garden. Here are 2 of the bunching onions that I plan to grow using winter sowing. And then I'm also going to do Walla Walla larger onions, and these have a much longer amount of days to maturity. I think it's 120 days, let's see. Yeah, 120 days, so that is a long time. But yeah, I really am excited to be able to do onions this year. My husband isn't a huge fan of them, but I do like cooking with them on occasion. And to have the option to now grow them because I have more space, because I have this big community garden, is just really, really exciting for me. And I'd love to hear any tips you guys also have. You'll also notice that I am using a lot more seeds, planting a lot more seeds in these jugs than I have recommended. So I normally recommend, between 3 to 6, maybe up to 8 seeds per jug. But I have watched videos, because I'm new to growing onions, I've watched videos with Charles Dowding and others where they transplant onions from little cells that have 6 or more in this little tiny space. So he said the onion roots are really hardy, they can handle being transplanted and separated, and I've seen others do that, so I'm less worried about crowding them for the onion varieties I'm growing this year. I'm really looking forward to trying to grow Walla Walla onions this year. I do think I'll probably need to use some season extenders, like tunnel covers or other things to help them get that full 120 days in. That's 4 months minimum, so that does stretch it into the fall. We do have relatively warm falls, but I'll definitely need to do something to keep them alive. Next up is kale, and I love kale so much. I'm really looking forward to growing it this year in the community garden. Last year, the groundhog Bob and his family in my backyard, they decimated my kale, and they even tore up the bridle tool that I had covering it to keep the cabbage butterflies off of it. And so this year I'm going to try it in the community garden, try the bridle tool, and I'm looking so forward to potentially having big harvests of kale this year for my salad, for soups, for all kinds of things. Let's start off with my favorite, which is the dinosaur kale. I'm trying another little trick I just thought of today, which is I have a little saucer of water here, and instead of wiping my dirty hands on the cloth every time, I'm gonna dip them in the water and then wipe. One of the things I love about this kale is how tender the leaves are when you go to cook them. They take very little time to cook in the pan in a saute. In fact, I don't think I've ever boiled these unless I was cooking them in a soup. Now the red Russian kale. The red Russian kale I like to save for mixed green salads. It can be really tasty and add some really great texture. Here's one tip. When you're putting the tape on, if there's any little crinkles at the top, make sure to push them in real tight and real hard, because if any water gets in there, that could break the seal on the duct tape. And I think often for me, when I haven't pushed it in well enough or the crinkle's too big, the crinkle, whatever is too big, that's often when that issue happens. Now here's a variety I haven't tried before, which is the dwarf blue curled kale. I'll be curious to see what the flavor is like on it, so I'm going to do a smaller container of this one as well. One of the things I love about kale is that when the plants are established, you can basically harvest leaves from them all summer, spring, summer, and fall season long, basically until there's a frost. And so you can have a constant crop of the plant as long as you take good care of it. Now let's turn to my next favorite type of green, which are lettuces. I'm going to start off with a set of romaine lettuces. I really love how crunchy romaine lettuce is, and I'm going to try 3 different varieties, although the Paris Island one is the one I like the most. Let me also mention that romaine lettuce is great because, like any leaf lettuce, you can harvest the leaves as they're growing and get them as they mature. Or you could let it form a full head. I've never grown one long enough to form a full head, but I'm definitely looking forward to trying that this time. This lettuce has a very long name that I think might be German, that I'm not going to try to venture to pronounce because you know how I am with pronunciations, but I looked it up and it translates as speckled trout. So I'm very much looking forward to having this fun looking lettuce in my salad bowls. This Cimarron lettuce is able to handle high temperatures, so a lot of lettuce will go to seed and will turn really bitter when it gets hot outside, but this particular variety is one that is supposed to be able to handle the heat and not turn, so I am looking forward to seeing if that holds true. Alright, let's turn to the other leaf lettuce that I'm planning on growing. This is just a nice variety of color, as well as arugula, which gives a really nice flavor. This is something I'm going to both grow using winter sowing and the succession planting of planting them afterwards as well. This is black-seeded Simpson lettuce, and black-seeded Simpson lettuce is sort of now for me a standard thing to include in my garden. I've included it in the last 2 years. I've really enjoyed the leaves from it. It tastes really good. It has a nice crunch, and it's really pretty in a sandwich when the leaves are a little bit curly at the end, but it's not bitter like many of the leaves that have sort of that curly leaf look. Like many people, I got the Merlot lettuce as a freebie from Baker Creek as part of buying seeds from them. And I actually have 3 packets in my box, so I definitely need to grow as many of these as I can. But I really love the red, deep, dark lettuce leaves here. that it provides, and some real nice color to put in with sandwiches, salads, or maybe even for lettuce wraps. In this container, I am combining the red oak leaf lettuce and red sales lettuce seeds, because I am probably not going to grow them to full size. I'm probably going to plant them together as chunks to see which go and sort of have microgreens in the garden. This is probably some of the ones I will try growing in my front yard garden, and maybe in a container in hopes of reducing the amount of pests who get at them. In case you're curious, although I am giving you the shortened version of this, I would say each jug takes about 3 to 4 minutes to do. Arugula. This is a lettuce that I love to grow. It has a little bit of spice or heat to it. I like to make just cheese sandwiches with tomato, and sometimes putting arugula in a toast with cheese sandwich adds an extra little flavor. It makes it really delicious. Leeks are one crop I am now able to grow because I have more space with that community garden plot. I don't cook with leeks too often, partly because rinsing them all the sand when you get them from the store can be a pain in the butt. But I do enjoy trying new varieties, and I would like to rediscover leeks, I think. So I'm going to try a small crop of them this year. That's why I'm using the soda bottle for a small bunch, and just to see if this is something I want to grow more of in future years. Red acre cabbage or purple cabbage. I am so looking forward to having this year. I love to make German recipes with it, to pickle it, to chop it up and shred it and put it in salads and coleslaw for color. And then also, this is just one of the crops that, cabbage can take up a lot of space, especially the bigger varieties. And if I didn't have this community garden, this is something I wouldn't be able to grow. This was one of the reasons, in fact, that I thought, well, I really need to get bigger space because I really want to grow more cabbage this year. Charmant cabbage. This is a head of Charmant cabbage that I harvested last year from my garden. It's a little smaller than it was the prior year because the cabbage didn't get full sun the whole time. But I really like the flavor of it, and this is a variety that isn't prone to splitting if you leave it too long before harvesting, and in a community garden that's a big risk. So I'm definitely going to grow all I can of the remaining seeds here, and yeah, so we should have green and purple cabbage this summer. This large leaf spinach I grew last year, and it did really well in my garden. The leaves were large but also tender, and so I'm going to both winter sow and grow these this year, but I didn't winter sow them this weekend. I'll probably get to it next weekend or the weekend after. Now a quick look at some of the varieties I'm going to direct sow in March in the garden. They include this green arrow shelling pea that is supposed to produce pods of up to like 10 peas per pod, which will be great. And if we can grow enough plants, we might even have enough to freeze, but we will see. I'm really excited. I want more peas. My husband and I go through like 2 bags of frozen peas a week, so if we can grow some, that'd be great. And then sugar snap peas. This sugar and variety is a classic for anybody who wants to grow sugar snap peas. And believe it or not, the groundhog in our backyard, he didn't eat the seedlings, maybe because he hadn't come out of hibernation or whatever. So I think I can grow these in the backyard again this coming year. And since I have them in stock, I'm going to finish up my little marvel. These are also a shelling pea, so I'll probably grow those in the community garden this year. I'm also going to grow Swiss chard, both this rainbow Swiss chard and the Vulcan Swiss chard that I have here. Swiss chard is great. It can grow all summer long. I don't think it bolts necessarily. I think it can handle heat and direct sun. This is another crop that I will plant in the spring, but I expect to use and harvest all summer long. I'm also going to plant a variety of beets. I actually have more coming from a seed exchange, but this Ruby Queen beet is one I've grown year after year, and they've done really well in the garden. There's this beautiful purple, or red, but they're kind of purple, Red Baron beets. I can't remember what these look like, but I remember reading these do really well. And then this Badger Flame beet from row 7. This is supposed to be a variety that doesn't have as much of an earthy flavor. Personally, I like the earthy flavor of beets, but I am curious to see how these will turn out. Now to radishes, one of my favorite early spring fast crops. I'm going to grow a variety of them this year, both in my front yard garden as well as the community garden. Some of them have a little bit longer of a harvest period than others, so I'm probably going to divide it up by that. And you know, I put out several videos this last year, last spring, on how I like to eat them with some recipes. I might try doing a couple more videos on that this year. But radishes are a really fast 30 to 40 day type crop, and a really, like, when you need that instant satisfaction of harvesting, it's a great thing to grow in the spring. All right, let's go outside and see. These are all I sowed this weekend, plus the perennial flowers and native flowers that I have planted seeds for winter sowing. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And let me know what you're growing for this year and how your winter sowing is going. And see you next time.